The title of this session is The Evolving Kurdish Identity. The moderator of our session is Yad Abdulqader. Yad Abdulqader writes on politics, culture, and social change, while also producing documentaries, short films, and stories that explore the lives of Kurds and minorities in Iraq. With more than 8 years of experience working with international organizations in Iraq and a master's degree in Middle Eastern Studies from Cattolica University in Milan. I'm sure I pronounced that wrong. Yad brings a wide-ranging perspective to conversations on the evolving narratives of Kurdish identity. Thank you very much, Yad, for being here. Thank you for Nina and Dr. Abbas Vali. And I would like to also ask Dr. Boris James to the stage. That's fine. Yeah, thank you very much. You may begin the session.
Thank you, Shana. Good morning, everyone. I hope you've been enjoying the forum so far. Welcome to this panel on the Evolving Kurdish Identity. I'm Yad, and I will be moderating this panel. Just to give you a brief introduction to the structure of the panel, I will be asking each of the speakers one question, and then we'll have 10 minutes for their speeches. And if they manage to finish their speeches in less than 10 minutes, I will have the honor of asking them a second question.
Can you speak to your mic, please?
Oh, you can't hear me?
Not too close. It's vibrating.
Okay. Test. It's good? They say it's good.
Yeah.
Cool. So as we've seen throughout this forum, Kurdish identity shows itself in many different forms, through literature, through history, through politics, and through daily cultural expressions. On this panel, we're turning our attention more directly to the evolving nature of Kurdish identity. And like any other identity, Kurdish identity is not something fixed once and for all. It continues to evolve and it continues to change. And of course, the division of Kurds across 4 different nation states has been that we are living in different realities, different political, social, and cultural realities, and we've had to adapt ourselves to it. And today, with migration, with globalization, and with new technological changes, our identity continues to evolve. And so for this panel, we've invited a group of scholars and writers to reflect on the different aspects of Kurdish identity, and each will speak about it from the perspective of their own work. And to begin, I think we will first look at the historical foundations of Kurdish identity. And for that, I'm pleased to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Boris James, who will provide us with a historical background. Dr. Boris is an assistant professor of history at Paul Valéry University in Montpellier. He's a historian, Arabist, Persianist, and Kurdologist. His research explores how the idea of the Kurd has been reproduced throughout history, the development of Kurdish schools, school systems in Iraq and Syria, and the construction of Kurdish memory in the region. Dr. Boris, welcome to the panel. My question for you is, how did people in the Middle Ages, up until the 17th and 18th century, understand being a Kurd? And was it more about religion or ethnicity, or there were other forms of belonging? In other words, if you asked the Kurd back then, who are you? How would their answer might differ from someone today? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for this introduction, and I'd like to thank the organizers as well before anything starts. And very glad to be here and very honored. And so to answer your question, not in one word, and we will not be able to answer it in one word. What I'm interested in while looking at your question is the fact that you use this word, like you use this sentence about what did you say? Who are you, etc. And you said like if we were to ask someone in the Middle Ages. So when you look at things this way, you look at what is at the core of identity, or at the core of the construction of a category nowadays, which is subjectivity. You cannot get rid of the fact that people self-attribute themselves the category of Kurd, and they designate themselves as Kurd, and that's the main criteria in a way. So and when you do that in history, it's a bit different because you have to rely on sources which are not most of the time written by the Kurds, and especially in the Middle Ages, you have to wait until the 16th century to find people who self-define as Kurd. So it's all that is a bit difficult. And to come back to the premises of the question of identity, as you said, and you very well described it. Identities are moving. Populations move all the time, and the culture also moves and changes. And so, like when we do history and we ask this question of identity, we look at three things. The one thing is the category, the use of the category Kurd, who's using it and how it is used. We try to look at what is supposed to be the cultural content which is attached to it, so language, food, music, etc. All the human productions and artifacts, and something which is sometimes left apart, which is the social and the political processes that can influence the relationship in between the use of the category and the cultural content. So I know it could be a bit bothering to answer the question this way, because I'm not answering Kurds are this, and the Middle Ages Kurds would answer this way, but we can identify at least three situations, three political and things that contribute or contributed in the past to produce and reproduce the category Kurd. And we do that through the. So the first situation, to be a bit shorter, is the fact that we look at the Kurds during the Middle Ages as a Bedouin people, in the Khaldunian sense of the term. Bedouin people meaning, it doesn't mean Arab Bedouin, it means being in a certain situation, in a certain state of civilization. So it's related to the fact that Kurds are warlike people. They integrated the caliphate, or the Muslim imperium very fast, and they became a people of Islam in a way. they also belong to, they are looked at as belonging to the outside world of the Imperium, and they have a specific relationship. But the fact that they are warlike people, it means that they can have a share in the political construction of the Imperium. So they have the potential to lead and to conquer sedentarity as opposed to Bedouinity. So that's the first situation. But in any case, what we have to know is that the Kurds in the Middle Ages it's an oppositional, situational category. So like Kurd, Akrad, it means it's always in a relationship of analogy and difference with other categories, which are Turk, Ajam, Arab, and Furs. So to be really fast. So what I'm saying is that if you answer very bluntly the question is that we face an agro-pastoral population, warlike people. We have, but we also have lots of people living outside of this framework and that are described and that self-define themselves as Kurds. We see also during the Middle Ages the emergence of these Kurdish subjectivities through others literary productions, but mainly in the situations of conflict. So and the conflict, and it's also where lies the question of the oppositional category, is that mainly. Especially from the 10th to the 12th century, the Kurds are the ones who are in conflict with the Turks. So that's the first framework, but I will stop. I won't take too long. The second framework is the question, the geographical framework, the geographical element. And in the geographical element is that you have a place which lies in western Zagros and goes all through higher Mesopotamia, which is described as the land of the Kurds. And it's looked at as the cradle of the Kurds, but also it's a place where you have a very specific political and social structures that flourishes, and mainly through the tribal structures. So that's the thing. But in just to say that, like also to be more precise, and we are not facing a nationalistic construction, and the territory is not supposed to become the territory of a nation state at this time. That's for sure. So. And the third framework is, and it started to construct itself after the coming to power of Salah ad-Din and the Ayyubids. It's the fact that the Kurds it's also linked with the Khaldunian framework. The Kurds became linked with a certain way of looking at the Imperium, and this transformed itself like after the fall of the Ayyubid dynasty, when the Mamluks came to power, and that the Mamluk came to power, and so they took the power from the Kurds, to be very fast, and in taking the power from the Kurds, they gave the Kurds a new role, in the construction, which is to become some kind of shield for the Muslim world against the Mongols and the Iranian space. I stop here.
Thank you. But just if you could just elaborate on this question. So in the Middle Ages, what was exactly the basis of identity? If today it's a national identity, we all identify ourselves as Kurds. In the Middle Ages, was it this ethnic identity was present?
I didn't answer the question what is it based on? Yeah. So of course you have elements that are very strong. For example, the language element, which is one of these cultural traits I was talking about. So mainly Iranian languages, which also and these Iranian languages are work and are interesting for the reproduction of the Kurdish category in some spaces in the face of the Arab speaking spaces or the Turkish spaces. So yes, the Kurds, they don't speak Arabic and they don't speak Turkish, and they speak something we have not so much information. The first occurrence of the Kurdish language is in the 15th century, and it's a very strange text written in Kurmanji, written in Armenian alphabet, and it's a Christian text. So, but put that aside. So you cannot say like the Kurds were, you cannot say that there's an hyper reproduction of a people over centuries. But the other thing is that to answer the question of religion, it's for sure the Kurds during the Middle Ages are described as Sunni Muslims, and it's the link with the Shafi'ism it starts very early during the 10th century. So these are very obvious threats, but you have people that go outside of this box and that are said to be Kurds for many reasons, because it's always about relating to other categories.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your excellent historical background. We will now turn to Professor Abbas Vali. Professor Abbas is a political and social theorist specializing in modern and contemporary Middle Eastern politics. He obtained a PhD in sociology from the University of London in 1983. He has held academic positions at the Universities of Wales, Swansea, Boğaziçi, and served as president of the University of Kurdistan, Hawdar. His research focuses on Kurdish nationalism, political theory, and sociology of the Middle East. Professor Abbas, welcome to this panel. And my question for you is, how are today's political, social, and technological changes reshaping Kurdish identity? And do you think these changes bring Kurds closer together, or do they create more divisions?
Thank you. Well, I'd like to start with a note of thanks for the American University of Iraq in Suleimania, and also the Kashkul Foundation for making it possible for me to be here and to meet with you and to speak and with you and take part in this session. Thank you for that. Identity is a contentious concept. It's much contested, and these contests always revealed the ambiguities which are in the concept or are associated with the concept. In the context of today's discussion in relation to the Kurds and Kurdish identity, I can refer to two different sets of ambiguities which surround the concept and its usage in the literature, either social scientific or political or literary discourses. The first set of ambiguities that are related to the concept of identity, these are basically ambiguities that exist in the theoretical construction of the concept. How this concept is constructed and how it is used. When we talk about, and then I come to the second one in relation to the Kurds. When we talk about the concept of identity, identity always theoretically presupposes the existence of another. The other. Identity simply is impossible without having another. So identity is related theoretically to the existence of another, and the relationship between this self and the other is mediated via the notion of difference. Difference defines the core of the identity. This difference is, and what is known as identity politics, which is also very contentious. Identity politics is a kind of politics that revolves around this difference and the idea, or say discourses, practices, struggles, which are all related to the idea of recognition of and respect for this difference or differences. Here, difference should not be misunderstood. The idea of difference always related to some form of oppression, some form of injustice. Therefore, the subject of this difference, the holder of this difference, always complains about being not recognized, always being excluded, oppressed, and so on. So in relation to that, we must say that this difference should not be understood as a claim for a universal justice. There is no universal justice should be attached to this idea. It is really different from the idea of difference is related to what I want to be, but it is not being recognized. Therefore, this difference here is the right to be different. Now, should not be sort of here understood as a universal right, like human rights or so on and so forth. This is the right to be different. My right to be different should be recognized, and the fact that I want to be different should be recognized. This is unrespected. Recognition and respected legally, politically, of course, is always attached to the question of rights, and the question of rights is by definition is related to the question of power. Therefore, identity, the question of difference, oppression, suppression, exclusion is always related to the question of power. Now here, there are differences, but one fundamental difference is very important, and that is called the constitutive difference. Constitutive difference is exactly what defines my conditions in relation to my other. But a lot of the ambiguities that are surrounding the question of difference, therefore of identity, relates to the idea that how this difference is perceived. In most literature, particularly on the idea in literary discourses, even in social scientific discourses, the idea that about difference, the relationship between self and other, is perceived as being two entities as being external, exterior to each other. This obviously is not what identity in terms of political philosophy or in philosophical discourse is meant. I mean, it is what difference is. I mean, I refer here to what Derrida says. Derrida says difference is what makes presence possible. If we don't have any difference, we have no presence. That is what makes it. Therefore, the idea that here I'm talking about is that this exteriority of me and my other, myself and my other, is the source of grave misunderstanding. In philosophical discourse, in relation to identity, throughout the modernity, and of course, in contemporary philosophical discourse, post-structuralism, it is always insisted that the relationship between self and other is the relationship of interiority. It is not the relationship of exteriority. This fundamental question, this fundamental issue is very, very important. That means that if we are talking about the idea that whether and this I am coming to the Kurdish identity, whether this identity is mutable or immutable, it is changeable or unchangeable. Is it modern or is it ancient or primordial? All comes back to the idea that how I see my other in this relationship of interiority. And if we see that, this interiority, if I talk about whether Kurdish identity is mutable, has changed or is changing now, therefore I should first address my relationship to my other. My others here in relation to the Kurds, the situation is a little bit more complicated. Because as you know, we don't have one other. We have four others. We have the Turks in Turkey. We have the Persians in Iran. We have Arabs in Iraq. And we have Arabs in Syria. And we have this multiple others, so to speak. And obviously, this tells us that to argue and state that, either politically or some nationalist discourses want to say, and they insist on that Kurdish identity is one uniform block, and that through history this has evolved as a uniform block, I would say at least in modern times, this is not true. It has been subjected to various geopolitical changes, and the relationship of the Kurds in Bakur, in Turkey, to its other, which is the Turkish state and Turkish culture and Turkish establishment, and in a sense even Turkish civil society, the relationship is very different to the one which is now in Iraq, and the relationship which is now in Syria, and the relationship which is now in Iran. It is a fragmented identity, and the identity politics, or the politics which is to follow from this, would also be fragmented. Now, whether this is something good or that bad, it is open to debate. But what is important here is that, from my point of view, Kurdish identity, this fragmentation in modern times, also gives a very important character to Kurdish identity, and that is extraterritoriality or extra-nationality, if you take national units of Turkey, Iran, Syria, and Iraq. Now we are sitting here. We have Kurds from Iraq, Kurds from Turkey, we have Kurds from Iran, and Kurds from Syria. We are all Kurds. In relation to one another, our presence, we are all Kurds. But in relation to our others, we certainly are very different. And this is a complicated issue in relation to the Kurdish identity. Now, one question that it is in the heart of this, whether Kurdish identity has remained the same or has this identity changed over time, I think it is fundamentally, aside from this issue that I discussed, is fundamentally a political issue. It is really a political issue. It depends on how you look at it. And when I say political issue, in the context of Kurds and Kurdish question, we are always talking about national identity. Seldom we are talking about identity of individual or group. Mostly, almost always, we are talking about national identity. Now, the question here is that when I said the idea whether it's Kurdish question, the Kurdish identity has remained, fixed, or it is, changeable, has changed, and so on and so forth, depends on the nature of this nationalist politics in the context of which we are discussing it. From an ethnicist primordialist position, if you look at it, Kurdish identity has never changed and will not change, and it is always fixed. And this is that we always stand in opposition to our, and this approach clearly relates the idea of Kurdish identity to the existence or presence or the absence of a national state. This is absolutely fundamental. In this respect, it is, so for them, the idea of nationalism, national identity, or forms of subjectivity which are formed in the context of nationalist politics in relation to perceptions or direct practices against the state or perceptions of a state, now we come to this issue that this is idea of the state and the nation state and the Kurdish identity, if it's to achieve or receive, to be recognition and respect that required for this, the framework of a Kurdish nation state is absolutely necessary. It is a must. Now that is the kind of approach. But there is another approach which looks at the idea in a more concrete way. And that is, it says that the idea of relationship between identity in the context of a nationalist politics which relates it to the existence of a Kurdish or nation state, this is always assumed in the context of one nation, one state, you see. But unfortunately, at present, in Iraq, in Syria, in Iran, in Turkey, we are living in societies which are multinational. These societies are multinational. And this idea of multinationality of these societies basically opens up a new way for approach. Now, whether one accepts, here I'm not passing any judgment, I am basically explaining. Now here, in this one say that because of the changes that ever since, 1918, that, and the formation of Kurdish communities and identity and so on in the context of multinational states and its development and evolution. For instance, now Iraq after 2003 is fundamentally different to Iraq before 2003. So, you have a constitution which recognizes binational. It says sovereignty in Iraq sovereignty is never divisible. You know, it is indivisible sovereignty, but under sovereignty, you can have power sharing.
Sorry, Professor Abbas, we're running low on time. If you could just...
What I'm trying to say that those who believe that now we are living in multinational states, they think that, you know, geopolitics of this region has resulted in a paradigm shift. And this paradigm shift is fundamentally this, that relationship between the state and the nation state is become problematic. The relationship between national identity and national sovereignty has become problematic. And because they have become problematic in the context of multinational states that we are living in currently in the Syria, therefore this paradigm change is a real, true issue which has to be addressed. And if it has been addressed, therefore the consequences, theoretical and philosophical, or I'll say more theoretical consequences of it, should be taken into account in rethinking and possibly reconstructing Kurdish identity in the light of developments that has led to the present situation and the situation in which we all live now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Abbas, for this illuminating perspective. I actually have a lot of questions, but I will hold on to them until the Q&A session. We will move to Dr. Allan Hassaniyan. Dr. Allan is a senior lecturer in the Middle East Studies at the Institute of Arab and Islamic Studies at the University of Exeter. He is the author of Kurdish Politics in Iran, Cross-Border Interactions and Mobilizations. Dr. Allan, from your research on cross-border Kurdish identity, which aspect of Kurdish identity do you think remains central and which aspects are changing?
پێش هەموو شتێک ئەو کاتتان باش و زۆر سپاس دەکەن بەڕاستی لە زانکۆی ئەمریکی لە سلێمانی کوردستان هەروەها هاوڕێیانی کەشکۆڵ بۆ ئامادەکردنی ئەم کۆنفرانسە ماندووبوونیان زۆر کێشە زۆر سپاس. Well, hello everyone. Firstly, I would like to say hugely thanks to the organizer for this amazing forum to bring us together, different people, amazing people from different backgrounds. Thank you so much. Thank you, Yad, for this question. I think as been mentioned, we are a nation like split across different states, if we think in a modern, from a modern perspective. And in this regard, the borders, Snur, Hudud, has played a very, very important role for the way we as Kurds see ourselves, self-identification, how we see our others, and as has been mentioned, we have many others which actually are our sovereigns that have ruled us actually through different centuries. If we consider like this importance of Snur, borders, we can start from the 1514, the Battle of Chaldran, which is the official division of Kurdistan from territorially. However, regarding your question and how Kurdish identity has changed, as I said, like the concept cross-borderness, our transborder national identity in the Kurdish context plays a very important role. So here I try to reflect on the evolution, emergence, and also the importance of Kurdish cross-border identity and what kind of challenges encounters this element of Kurdishness, of Kurdiety. So I would say that Kurdish national identity has been shaped by events, by things that currently are unfolding around us. And in this regard, Kurdish identity, similar to other identity, if you approach it from a constructive perspective, it is also changing, is in a constant change and reshaping. So, and my talk is actually approaching this element of Kurdishness from a critical perspective. So through my research and publication, I have argued that cross-border Kurdish identity is a very important element of Kurdish identity, very important hallmark and feature of Kurdish identity. However, on the other hand, if you look at the at least contemporary Kurdish history and the way, like we have seen, we have interacted with each other, this form of identity have been violated. It has been ignored, okay? Which is actually the title of my book, as Yad mentioned, Kurdish Politics in Iran and Cross-Border Mobilization since 1947. So how Kurds from different parts of Kurdistan, especially Rojhelat and Bashur, the political party, interacted, and the way this interaction, in a very critical perspective, I would say, has impacted Kurdish nationalism from a wider perspective. However, going back to the importance of cross-border Kurdish perspective, identity, this sort of identity has, through the 21st century of Kurdish politics and history, has been a source of solidarity, protection, security, especially for Kurd individual or political groups that have faced persecution, displacement, and so on. Okay, but it is like experiencing a deterioration, a massive change. Okay, so regardless of one's recognition, because it's been mentioned, we are actually in a very comfortable context. Wherever we go as a Kurd, especially in academia, we are questioned a lot because we are also surrounded not just as people that have been divided and occupied by different nation states, but also in the academia, in like the way we are interacting with the others, question quite often our identity, our existence, our culture and language. So it doesn't matter how we question these artificial nation-state borders, but we are living in a sad reality, which is actually we have been divided. We have Iranian Kurds, we have Kurds from Turkey, Kurds from Syria, Kurds from, you name it, Iraq. And it is the way that actually the border have imposed on us the way we are self-identifying ourselves, you know. So in this regard, this border, I was about to say that this artificial and border and the partition of Kurdistan has really impacted the way Kurds see themselves. So the geographical and geopolitical landscape and reality of Kurdistan has played a very important role in the way political actors of Kurds, and in this regard, political parties of Kurds have during like 20th century, 21st century, have played their role in mobilizing the liberation movement in Kurdistan. So when it comes to importance of the geopolitical position of Kurdistan, scholars, including Maria Oshia, who describes this Kurdish reality as trapped between the map and reality, okay? And this condition has rendered Kurdish politics and Kurdish movement like to be in a very, very delicate condition, which especially when we refer to ruling actors of the Kurdish movement, they have committed a lot of practices, critical practices, you know, which has impacted our cross-border element of our cross-border identity. So in this regard, this conduct has contributed to this form of, you know, the construction, the shaping and reshaping of Kurdish identity. However, cross-border Kurdish identity and cross-border Kurdish relationship, it is not something new. We have many examples of this relation from a political perspective. Probably culture has been impacted differently, but when we look at the political aspect of this, we can quite focus on the 20th century with the existence of a variety of evidence of Kurds from different parts of Kurdistan have tried actually as even organization to engage with Kurds from other parts to improve these relations. So one example is if you look at the 1940s and the emergence of the political organization quite before the decline of the Kurdistan Republic Center in Mahabad. One example is the Society for the Revival of Kurd or Kurdistan, کۆمەڵناسی Kurd Kurdistan, which is commonly referred to as JK. It is a good example of a political organization that has tried to enhance this cross-border relationship without really, if you look at the afterward period, how political organization of Kurds from all parts of Kurdistan actually have played a quite destructive, damaging role in this regard. So JK is a good example. So one example of this positive step is that in 1944, JK representative met with a Kurdish organization from Iraqi Kurdistan and Turkish, from Turkey at the area around Mount Dalanper, Çiğay Dalanper. And they signed the Pact of the Three Border, or Peymani Siyesnur. This is an example of a pact that still remains actually as an important example of a formal cross-border Kurdish agreement. So again, just to re-emphasize why this cross-border Kurdishness is so important. Because as a nation that has been partitioned between four antagonistic nation states, Iran, Iraq, Turkey, and Syria, we have experienced, if you look at the contemporary period of Kurdish history, the post-decline of the Kurdistan Republic, the 1960s, which Kurds from Iran really relied on the support and the safe haven provided by the Kurdish movement in the Iraqi Kurdistan. If you look at the 80s, we have many examples of especially Rojhelat-Bashur relation, post-1980s, and so on. So you have the example of Halabja, you have the example of Koro, So many examples actually, maybe, we hear this narrative, the Iranian state has been quite kind to the Kurds, which were displaced. But it was not the Iranian state actually, it was the Kurd on the other side of the border. And the similar, it happens when we see that Kurd from Rojhelat, from Rojava, become displaced, or from Bakur. It is not thanks to the Iraqi state that Kurd can easily, or maybe with difficulty, cross the border. No, because they have their own nation on the other side, and not just the nation as an imagined community, but literally the nation, the cousins, the brother, that the border has split them. Look at Qamishlu and look at the Nasibin, for example. Literally, you have relatives from the same family living on the other side. So it is the reality that this aspect, this feature of Kurdishness has really provided safety and security. So the problem is, just to conclude, when you look at the political landscape, actually, we don't need to go back much in history to find evidences that as a nation, we become much closer in terms of assimilation to our others rather than our kin and families on the other side of the border. So this predicament can be described to multiply factors. Of course, the state's denial an assimilation policy has impacted and deteriorated this aspect of Kurdishness. But the reality is Kurdish political movement, leaders, organization, but also Kurdish intellectual play a very important, critical role in the way that this cross-border aspect of Kurdishness has been deteriorated to the level I argue as I experience as well. So, but I also argue that without significant, constructive, and target-oriented political and cultural strategy and involvement, similar to assimilation, this kind of deterioration will lead to increasing marginalization of Kurds in their occupied homeland, Kurdistan, but also in diaspora. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Allan. We will now move to Ms. Nina Karimi. I will introduce her in English, and then I will switch to Kurdish for the question. Ms. Nina Karimi is a Kurdish writer, translator, and essayist. She holds master's degrees in social research from Iran Academia and in sociology from Payam Noor University. Her research and essays focus on literature, gender, and cultural trauma, and she has served on juries, including the Mahabat Story Award and the Galabesh Festival. خاتونینا کەریمی بەخێر بیت. پرسیارەکەی من بۆ تۆ ئەوەیە کە چۆن شوناسی کورد لە ئەدەبیات و هونەری کوردیدا وێ ناکراوە و چۆن نووسێری ژن و پیاوی کورد لە دروستکردنی شوناس لە ئەدەبیاتدا جیاوازن.
سڵاو ڕێز، سەرەتا مەوێت دەستخۆشی بکەم لە زانکۆی ئەمریکی عێراق لە سلێمانی و هەروەها ئەندامانی کەشکۆڵ کە ئەم دیدارەیان ڕێک خستووە و مایە شانازیە کە لە خزمەتی ئێوە مامۆستایانی عزیزدام. لە ڕاستیدا بۆ پرسیارە یەکەمەکە ئەتوانین بڵێن کە ئەرکی وێناکردنی شوناس و ناسنامەی کوردی بە درێژایی مێژوو تا دەهەکانی ئەخیر لەسەر ئەستۆی هونەر و ئەدەبیات بووە و بیرمەندان و ڕووناکبیرانی کورد لەم بەستێنە کەڵکیان وەرگرتووە بۆ پێناسەکردنی خۆیان و ئەوی دی کە مامۆستا فەرموویان یان ئەوانی دی. چونکە کورد لەبەر زۆرێک هۆکاری سیاسی و کۆمەڵایەتی وەک کەمبوونی ڕێژەی خوێندکارانی، نزمبوونی ئاستی خوێندکاری بە تایبەت لە حوجرەکان و مەکتەبخانەکاندا و هەروەها کارکردن لە چوارچێوەی ئایدیۆلۆژیە زاڵەکان وەک ئایدیۆلۆژیە ئاینیەکاندا و دواتر لە سەردەمی مۆدێرندا بەهۆی هەوڵی یەکسانسازی نەتەوە مۆدێرنەکانەوە بۆ ئیدغامکردن و توانەوەی شوناسە ئێتنیکیەکان لە ناسنامە و شوناسێکی نەتەوەی گەورەتردا لە ڕاستیدا نەیانتوانیوە کوردەکان مێژوویەکی وایان ببێت، مێژوویەکی وامان لە بەردەستانیە. هەروەها تا ساڵەکانی ئەخیر پێم وانە بێت کە ئێمە توانی بێتمان لە ڕێگەی دەروونناسی، کۆمەڵناسی یان زانستی مێژوویەوە خۆمان پێناسە بکەین کەواتە ئەمانە هەموویان تازەن لانیکەم لە کوردەواریدا وەک زانستێکی تازە هاتووەتە ناو ئێمەوە و پشتمان بۆ ناسینی خۆمان بەستووە بە ئەو ئەدەبیاتە گێڕانەوەیە زارەکی و نووسراوەیە کە لەبەر دەستماندایە. لە ڕاستیدا ئەتوانین بڵێن کە ئەدەبیات هەمیشە بەستێنێک بووە بۆ نواندنەوە و مانابەخشین بە ژیان و شوناسی کوردەکان و ئەم کارەی لە ڕێگای دروستکردنی هێما و ئولگو و قارەمانەوە کردووە. ینی بڕێک کۆڵەکەی بۆ دروستکردوین کە ئێمە بتوانین لە دۆریاندا کۆبینەوە و خۆمان بە ئێمەیەک بزانین و خۆمان جیا بکەینەوە لە ئەویدی یا ئەوانی دی. لە لایەکی ترەوە وەک ئیستوارت هاڵ ئاماژەی پێیەکات نواندنەوە تەنها بەپێی جۆری گوتارەکان و گێڕانەوەکان بەڕاحەتی لە مێژووی ئەدەبی گێڕانەوەی ئێمەدا بارها گۆڕدراوە و قارەمانەکان هێماکان و ئولگووەکان و تەنانەت خودی مێژووش تووشی ئەو گۆڕانکاریە بووە و یادگەی بە کۆمەڵی ئێمە ئەو شتێک کە ئێمە خۆمانی پێناسە ئەکەین و ئەو مێژووە بە کۆمەڵی کە هەمانە مێژوو و یادگەیەکی نەگۆڕ و چەقبەستوو نەبووە و لە هەر دەورەیەکدا ئێمەیەکی جیاوازی دروست کردووە خۆڵقاندوویەتی. پێم وایە کە ئەگەر بچمە سەر پرسیارە دووهەمەکە باشتر بێت هەر ئەمە چونکە مامۆستایان ئاماژەیان بە بابەتی شۆناس و ناسنامەدا و من زیاتر لەسەر ئەوە نەچم و گۆڕانکاریەکانی بە پێگێڕانەوە و ئەوەی کە چۆن نووسەری ژنوپیاوی کورد لە دروستکردنی شۆناسی کوردیدا و لە ناسنامەی کورد دروستکردنی ناسنامەی کوردیدا پێکەوە جیاوازن. ڕاستیەکی تاڵ ئەمەوێ باس لە ڕاستیەکی تاڵ بکەم ئەویش ئەوەی کە لە ڕاستیدا ئێمە کاتێک باسی گێڕەوەر و نووسەر و ئەدی بکەین لە ئەدەبیاتی کوردیدا تا ساڵەکانی ئەخیر هەرمە بەسمان نووسەر و ئەدیب و گێڕەوەری پیاوە. یعنی ئەو شتێکی ئێمە هەمانە هەر ئەو شتەیەکە پیاوەکان وتویانە. کاتێک ئێمە باس لە زمانی ژنانە یان ئەدەبی ژناناکەین مەبەستمان قاعدەتەن ئەوە نییە کە زمانێکی تایبەتیان هەیە ژنان بۆەوە پێکەوە ئاخافتنیان هەبێت یان بڕێک دەستەواژە و سلاحی تایبەت بە خۆیان هەبێت نایمە مەبەستمانەوەی کە چۆن جیهانبینی ژنان لە ئەدەبیاتیاندا و لە گێڕانەوەکانیاندا ڕەنگەداتەوە چۆن گۆشەنیگای خۆیان و جیهانبینی خۆیان وارد ئەکەن داخڵ ئەکەن بۆ گێڕانەوە و ڕەوایەتێکە هەیەە. و ژنان لەبەر زۆرێک هۆکار وەک ڕۆڵە کۆمەڵایەتیەکان وەک دایک بوون ژن بوون بە هەندوەرنەگیران لەلایەن کۆمەلگاوە بە زۆر دەلیل و هەروەها لەبەر باوبوونی پێناسەکردنی ئافرەتی ژن و خراپ ئەو بەرچەسپانەی کە ئەو ئێتیکێتانەی کە لە ژنانی ئەدەن زۆر درەنگتر لەوەی کە پێویست بووە دەستیان کردووە بە گێڕانەوەی خۆیان دەستیان کردووە بە باسکردن لە هەستەکان و ئەزمونە ژینراوەکانی خۆیان و تەنانەت نووسینیش و هەر ئەمە ڕێگای بۆ نووسەر و گێڕەوەری پیاو خۆش کردووە تا تەسویرێک لە ژنمان بۆ وێنا بکات و ژنێکمان بۆ بخڵقێنێت کە ڕەنگە شۆناسەکەی زۆر جیاواز بێت لەوەی کە ژن خۆی هەیە یعنی فاصلەیەکی زۆری هەبێت و چۆن شتێکی تر لە کۆمەلگا لەبەر دەست نەبووە جگە لەو گێڕانەوە و ئەو حکایەت و ڕەوایەتە دیارە خودی ژنانیش دواتر کاتێک دەست دەکەن بە گێڕانەوەی خۆیان پشت بۆ نەریتە ئەدەبیە ئەبەستن پشت بۆ گێڕانەوانە ئەبەستن کە بیستویانە و لەوەوە دەست پێەکەن. بۆ نمونە وەک چۆن لە جیهانبینیەکی پیاوانە کەڵکوەرەگرن بۆەوەی کە خۆیان بەیان بکەن سەری شێرێکی مەستورە خانمی ئێردەڵان بکەین کە کورتەیەکی بۆتانە خوێنمەوە بە خەسرۆخانەڵێ گرفتارم بە نازی چاوەکانی مەستی فەتاونت برینداورم بە تیری سینەسۆزی نیشی مژگانت بە زولف و پەرچەم و ئەگریجەکانت غارەتت کردم دڵێکم بوو ئەویشت خستە نێو چاهی زەنەختانت زولف و پەرچەم و ئەگریجە ئەو نیشی مژگان و هەموو شتانە وەسفێکە کە دیارە پیاوان بۆ مەدحکردنی خۆشەویستەکەیان بەکاریان هێناوە و ئێمە بینین کە کاتێک ژنێک دەیەوێت باسی خۆشەویستی خۆی بکات ناچارە کە هەر لەو نەریتە ئەدەبیە و هەر لەو چوارچێوە کەڵکوەر بگرێت. دوای ئەوەش ژنان ئەم نووسینی ژنانە و خەڵقکردن و خڵقاندنی کاراکتەری ژن لەلایەن پیاوانەوە ئەبێتە هۆی شتێکی تر ئەویش ئەوەی کە وەک ئاماژەمان پێدا بڕێک ئولگو هێما سەرمەشق دروست دەکات لە کۆمەلگا کە وە لە ئەدەبیاتدا کە ئێمە پشتی پێ ئەبەستین ئێمە پێمان وایە کە ژنی باش ئەو ژنەیە کە لەو چیرۆکەدا هەستمان بە هاودڵی کردووە لەگەڵی وە ژنی خراپ ئەو ژنەیە کە لە چیرۆکەکەدا پندێکی بەسەر دێت بەڵایەکی بەسەر دێت و ئەمەش زۆر بە ئاسانی پەیوەندی هەیە بە ئاستی تێگەیشتنی نووسەرەکان لە ژنانی کۆمەلگا و قسەکردن لەگەڵ ئەو ژنانەوە تێگەیشتن لێیان کە خۆی هەڵەگەڕێتەوە بۆ ئاستی دەست پێڕاگەیشتنی نووسەرانی پیاو بۆ ژنان. بۆ نمونە ڤۆڵف لە کتێبەکەیدا ژوورێک بۆ خۆت ئاماژە بەوە کات کە ئەگەر پیاوێکی نووسەر بیەوێت باسی خزمەتکارێکی ژنی ڕەشپێست بکات سەرەتا پێویستە ئەو ژنە لە ئاستی کۆنتێسێک یان پرەنسێسێکە هەڵبکێشێت لەبەرەوەی کە بتوانێت ئەسڵەن باسی لێ بکات لێ تێبگات. مەبەستەوەیە کە چۆن لەو دۆرانەدا نووسەرانی ئەمە نووسەرانی کلاسیکی ئوروپی زیاتر هەڵسوکەوتیان لەگەڵ بنەماڵە باڵادەستەکانە بووە لەگەڵ دەوڵەمەندەکانە بووە و لەگەڵ ئەو ژنانەدا قسەیان کردووە ئەوانیان کردووە بە ئوبژەی نووسین و هەوڵیاندا و لەوان تێبگەن. ئەمە لە حاڵێکدایە کە لە وڵاتە شەرقیەکاندا بۆ نمونە لە ئێراندا چونکە لەبەر هۆکارڕاینیەکان نووسەرەکان دەستیان بە ژنی ناو ماڵ ڕانەگەیشتووە ئەو ژنانەی کە دێنە نێو ئەدەبیاتەوە بەتایبەت لە چیرۆکەکاندا ئەو ژنانان کە ئیمکانی ئەوەیان هەبووە کە لە دەرەوەی چوارچێوەی ماڵەکانیان بەسەرهاتێکی تریان هەبێت یعنی بۆ خۆیان بە شتێکی تر خۆیان پێناسە بکەن کە سوالکەرەکان بوون سۆزانیەکان بوون لەشفرۆشەکان مردوشۆرەکان ئەمانە کە نووسەری پیاویش توانیویە لیان نزیک بێتەوە. بۆ نمونە یەکەم ژنێکە لە ئەدەبیاتی داستانی ئێراندا دەرەکەوێت ئەلەویە خانمی سادق هێدایەتە کە هەم مردوشۆر و هەم لەشفرۆش. لە کۆمەڵگای کوردیدا ئێمام شتەمان نییە. لە کۆمەڵگای کوردیدا ژن هیچ کات لە ئەندەرونی نەبووە لە ماڵ لە چوارچێوەی ماڵدا حەشار نەدراوە. هەرچەند کە ئەمە تەنیا ڕووکەشێکی زاهریە لەبەر ئەوەی کە لەگەڵ تێکەڵبوون بە ژیانی کۆمەڵایەتی قەت کۆمەلگا لای بۆ دەغدغەکانیش نیش نەکردووەتەوە چونکە پرسی گرنگترمان لەلا بووە چونکە ئێمە هەستمان بە چۆساوەیی کردووە چونکە ئێمە لە ژێر کاریگەری بڕێک چەمکی ئاینیا بووین ژن و شەرافەتی ژن و زۆر شتی تر لە پرۆسەی خاوەنداریەتی و نیشتمانیە مانە ئەکرێتەوە و لەبەر ئەم هۆکارانە ژنان دەرفەتی ئەوە پەیان ناکەن کە بەسەرهاتی خۆیان لە گۆشەنیگای خۆیانەوە بگێڕنەوە و خۆیان پێناسە بکەن ینی ناسنامەی تایبەت بە ژنان لەو سەردەمەدا ئێمە لە بەردەستمانانیەوە نازانین ژنان چۆن خۆیانیان پێناسە کردووە. ئەمە یەکێک دووەوەی کە لە مێژووی ئەدەبیشتا ئەگەر کەسێک نووسیبێتی پەراوێزخراوە لە ئەدەبیاتی کوردیدا. بۆ نمونە لە کتێبی مێژووی ئەدەبی کوردی معرف خەزناداردا کە لە حەوت بەرگدا باسی ئەدەبیاتی کوردی ئەکات ناوی زیاتر لە 160 شاعر و نووسەری کورد تۆمار کراوە کە تەنها 3 کەسیان ژنن جیهانارا خانم ئامینە خان و هەروەها میهرەبان خانم. ئەمە بۆ مانایە نییە کە ژنان بیریان نەکردوێتەوە شتێکیان نەبووە بۆ ڕەوایەتکردن شتێکیان نەبووە بۆ قسەکردن لەسەری یان داڵغەیەکیان نەبووە. ئەمە بۆ مانایەیە کە بە هەند وەرنەگیراون کەس گوێی بۆیان شل نەکردووە و هەر ئەمە وەک دکتۆر فەرەنگیسی قادری لە وتارەکەیدا ئاماژەی پێەکات لە لێکۆڵینەوەکەیدا ببوورن ئاماژەی پێەکات بۆتە هۆی ئەوەی کە ژنانیش خۆیان ینی متمانە بەخۆی ئەوەیان نەبێت کە وەک نووسەرێکی جددی وەک بیرمەندێکی جددی خۆیان پێناسە بکەن و ئیدعای جیهانبینی و ناسنامە و شۆناسی خۆیانیان هەبێت. ئەمە لە لایەکەوە کە باسی نووسەر و گێڕەوەری ژنە وە لە لایەکی ترەوە ئەمە ئەبینین کە لە ئەدەبی زارەکیماندا ژن بەردەوام ڕۆڵی هەیە لە بەیت و باوەکاندا لە حەیرانەکاندا ژن بەردەوام هەیە و دووپاتیش ینی ڕۆڵەکەشی سەرەکیە بەڵام بەپێ هەر ئەو شتانەی کە پێشتر باسمان کرد یانێ بەپێی شۆناسێک و گۆشەنیگایە کە پیاوان هەیەە. بۆ نمونە لە بەیتی سوارەدا من ئەمەم هێناوە چونکە زۆر دووپات ئەبێتەوە لە ئەدەبی زارەکیدا ئەم جۆرە وەسفکردنە دەیان جار دووپاتە بێتەوە. لە بەیتی سوارەدا هاتووە ئەوە کیش دەڵێ سوارەکەم برینداورە بە تیران بەڕمبی وەی با بمرم کە دەیبینم بە برینی دەخەنجەرێ تو خوداکەی بڵێنەوە بە حەکیمان بە ئەتاران ئەگەر زەفەرێکی پێنابەن چتاقیان دەستی نەکەنێ بۆ خۆم دەڕۆم دەرمانی بۆ دەگرمەوە لە هێلێ لە دارچینێ لە قەنەفڵێ لە ژەنگی دەگوارێ بەدەستی بەدەستنوێژ بە بیسمیلا بیسمیلاوی لە دەستاری دەسترمەوە بە ئارەقی خوڵکی بە گەردەنێ دێهاوێنمەوە سەر برینی سواری. دیارە ئەم وەسفە عاشقانەوە ئەوەی کە من بە ژەنگی پشتگوێم خۆشەویستەکەم چاک ئەبمەوە یان مەلهەمێک دروست بکرێت لە ئارەقی لاجانگ و ژەنگی گوارە خۆشەویستیەکی لە ڕادەبەدەری پیاوانەیە بەرامبەر بە ژنێک کە هەموو شتەکانی و ژنەی پێجوانە و هەمووی ئەنتزاعیە کاتەوە هەمووی وەک ئێستعارەیەک بەکارەهێنێت نەک بیرۆکەی خودی ژنێک کە پێی وا بێت کە بە ژەنگی گوارە و ئارەقی لاجانگ دەتوانێت مەڵهەمێک دروست بکات بۆی کە برینی خەنجەری پێ دەرمان بکات. هەر لێرەدا دیارەکە ئێمە بەردەوام تووشی ئەمە بووینەتەوە. با مثاڵێکی تر لە ڤۆلف بێنمەوە. ڤۆلف باسی وا کات ئەڵێ لە کاتی شەڕی جیهانیدا جەماعەتێک لە ژنان ئەڕۆیشتن و پێشکەشیانەدا بۆ پیاوانەی کە ڕوانەی شەڕەکە ئەکران. و پیاوانە یاوت ئێمە ژنەکانمان ئەڕۆین بۆ ئەوێ لەبەر ئەوەی کە ژنەکانمان سەرشۆڕ نەبین بەلای ژنەکانمانەوە شانازیمان پێ بکەن. ڤۆلف ئەڵێ ئەوە ئەو شتە بوو کە کۆمەڵگا بەسەریاندا سەپاندووی و ئەوان خۆیانیان بەمە پێناسە ئەکرد کە ئێمە جەماعەتێک ژنین کە پشتگیری لە بوێری ئەو پیاوانە ئەکەین کە ئەڕۆن بۆ شەڕ لە حاڵێکدا کە یەک بە یەکی ئەو ژنانە لە دەرونی خۆیاندا بێزار بوون لە شەڕ و بێزار بوون لەوەی کە خۆشەویستەکەیان بچێت بۆ شەڕ و ئەمەیان بە بوێری نازانی ڕەنگە بوێریان بەوە بزانایە کە مێردەکەیان براکەیان باوکیان لەگەڵیان بمێنێتەوە. ئەگەر
دەرفەت کات زۆر کەمەوە نەگەرم تا دەست خۆش بۆ خاتونینە بۆ باسە گرنگە ئەیکەینەوە ئینگلیزی بۆ مناقەشەکان. بەڵام ئەو ئایپادەکە. Before I read the questions from the audience, I have one question to Professor Abbas. Professor Abbas, you mentioned that the existence of the other is very important for the construction of. You mentioned that the existence of the other is very important for the construction of identity and national identity. I want to bring your focus to Bashur. Since 1991, and then especially after 2003, the Kurds themselves have been responsible for their own affairs, and especially for that generation that was born in those areas, in those eras, we don't have this other very strongly in our collective imagination, and I would like to know your perspective on what is the consequence of that, and yeah.
Yes, I mean, what I said is that theoretically, and for that matter philosophically, the whole idea of identity without an other is simply impossible. And what regulates the difference between the relationship between the two is the notion of difference. Now, before 2003, the relationship of the Kurdish community or Kurdish society in Iraq, better society I would say, to the state and power was very different than after 2003, more specifically after in 2004 or 5 when the Constitution was written and it was approved. Now, in that Constitution, the existence of the Kurds and Kurdish society in Iraq as an identity, as a nation, has been recognized now. And that recognition is followed by the language rights and, above all, regional self-government. Now, nobody can say that now these changes that have happened has not affected the forms of differences that existed between the Kurdish community or Kurdish society and the Ba'athist state. You see, we didn't have that at all in the stipulated. But one thing is very important here, that Iraq, in terms of national sovereignty, has a notion of sovereignty which is indivisible, and that is recognized internationally. You see, you have an Iraqi foreign minister, which is a Kurd, but Iraqi foreign minister is representing the sovereignty of the state of Iraq as a uniform political entity. But in terms of the relationship between Kurdish society and its political representation and Iraq, now I think the relationship revolves around different sets of they revolves around the very different forms of, let's say, differences. And that means that the relationship of, what I would say here, like the social scientists would say, in Iraq, we are experiencing or are encountering what they call a paradigm change here. The relationship of the Kurds to the nation state has changed. The relationship of the Kurds to national identity and national identity to sovereignty has changed. Now, this is very important. But this is how people who believe in this paradigm change. If you talk to an Orthodox, ethnic nationalist, Kurdish Orthodox ethnic nationalist, he would not accept this argument. His argument would say that, you can't talk about changes in identity if it is not related to the existence of a Kurdish state. Now, that is how he would read this. But those who believe that there has been a paradigm change, they would believe that now, yes, the whole idea of Kurdish identity in the context of Iraqi state in relation to power, in relation to the practice of power, in relation to the rights, in relation to culture, everything has changed. It has to be reconstructed. Now, these are two different approaches, but those different approaches basically are related to different relationship that these people have to the notion of Kurdish nation state as being represented. I mean, in Turkey as well now. In Turkey, I think the dominant argument, insofar as I know, in Turkey is one which says that the relationship of the Kurds to the idea of the nation state has changed. But whether that is acceptable in civil society or not, that's another. But in the Kurdish movement, that's the argument. So my idea is that identity is fundamentally relational. And the idea of fixed identity is contradiction in terms. You cannot basically have a fixed identity. If it is related to difference, then identity is relational. But how this relationship is being shaped, in what sense, that's open to argument.
Thank you so much for your answer. We have 5 minutes left and a lot of questions. I will pick this one to Dr. Boris James. The question is what you stated for Kurdish identity, the fact that it is largely a situational, positional one, shared by other people. Is it shared by other peoples of the region, or is it a Kurdish exceptionalism?
I'm not sure I hear well what you said.
Do you want me to repeat?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
So it says what you stated for Kurdish identity, that the fact that it's largely situational and a positional one. Is that shared by other people of the region, or is it something that we can call Kurdish exceptionalism?
No, there's no Kurdish exceptionalism. It's totally, I would say, it's totally classic that an ethnic category reproduces itself this way. So the question of maybe the fact that Kurds have experienced more situations of violence in the 20th century than others, or they haven't had the upper end in these confrontations. Maybe makes it a bit different, but it's totally normal that that there's always, it's a bit tricky to say that, but there's always a question of competition in using, or there's always as I said, the question of and the question of difference, like to come back to Dr. Abbas' comment, there's everybody's different. We are all different, but the question is that you have processes that will qualify these differences as being proper to a group or to some categories. So this is what is important. You know, you need these political processes to have the category to reproduce itself. So sometimes it's violence and it's competition, and yeah.
Thank you so much. I think we have time for one more question, and this one is from Chaumanara, and it's directed to either Dr. Allan or or Professor Abbas. The question is, has the phenomena of the border influenced the meaning and the principles of Kurdiety, or has Kurdiety as a set of values remained untouched?
Is it me or?
It's directed to both of you, so you can both feel free to answer.
Like to?
Well, thanks so much. So basically, similar to identity, I think the term Kurdiety or Kurdishness by itself is quite like, disputed in terms of its definition. For myself, Kurdiety is value. And because, especially Kurds, quite diverse as society, in terms of language, in terms of religion, even in terms of its landscape geography. Okay, so people from one region, their perception of themselves as a Kurd would be somehow different to the Kurds of some other. However, they still see themselves as a Kurd, and they praise Kurdiety. So if I give a simple definition of Kurdiety, actually Kurdiety is a form of collective Kurdish identity, though it is not automatically immutable or universally understood, okay? So in this regard, rather like ethnicity, nation, and nationalism, Kurdiety is quite influenced and shaped by discourses, political events, and the it's basically quite in transition as Kurd themselves and Kurdish identity. So, quite wide in terms of how to define Kurdiety. But if I again simplify it, I think Kurdiety is a precious value of Kurdishness.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I was about to say that, yes, thank you. I will borrow a few minutes from your lunch and ask Ms. Nina one more question. پرسیارێک بۆ تۆ هاتووە خاتونی ناڵێت هەزەکەی ژنان لە ناونەتەوەی کوردە مافخوراوبن یاخود خۆیان بەشداریان لە ئەدەبیاتە کەم کردووە.
پێم وایە پێشتر وەڵامی ئەوماندایەوە دیارە بەپێی ئەو لێکۆڵینەوەی کە دکتۆر فەرەنگیسی قادری کردویانە لێکۆڵینەوەیەکی تەواوە بەڕای من ئاماژە بەوەکەن کە زۆرێکی ژنمان هەیە لە کوردستانات لە کوردەواری با بڵێن لە شارە جۆراوجۆرەکاندا کە نووسیویانە بەرهەمیان هەیە بەڵام یان بڵاویان نەکردوێتەوە یان ئەگەر بڵاویان کردوێتەوە نەخوێندراوەتەوە بەرهەمەکانیان واتە ئەوەمان هەیە یانی ژنی بیرمەند و ژنی نووسەرمان هەیە و ژنان بەشداریەکەن بەڵام وەک ئاماژەم پێدا متمانە بەخۆیی ئەوەیان نەبووە کە خۆیان دەربخەن یا ئیدعایەکی جدی بکەن ئەمە لە لایەکەوە لە لایەکی ترەوە لە لایەن کۆمەلگاوە بە هەند نەگیراون وەک کەسی جدی سێریان نەکراوە بەڵام بەختەوەرانە ئێستا زۆر شت گۆڕاوە یعنی ئێمە زۆر دەنگی جدیمان هەیە لە ئەدەبیاتی ژناندا وەک ئاماژەم پێداوە هین پێشتر بوو بۆ لە ساڵەکانی ئەخیرا ئێمە ئەبینین کە ژنانی کورد لە ئەدەبیاتدا جوورێکی زر خۆیان پێناساکەنەوە یانە ئێمە ئەو ناسنامە چەند لایەنەمان هەیە لەبارەی ژنی کوردەوە بۆ نمونە ژنی کوردی ئیزەدی کە چالاکی مەدەنیە و لەبارەی خۆی و ناسنامەی خۆیەوە نووسێت وێنایەکی تەسویرێکی ترمان لە ژنی کورد بۆ وێنا ئاکات و ئەمە لەبەر ئەوەیە کە ژنان نەک تەنیا ڕۆڵی کۆمەڵایەتی زیاتریان وەرگرتووە ینی لە شغلە جیاوازەکانە خەریکی کارکردن زیاتر هاتوونەتە ناو کۆمەلگاوە خوێندەواریان زیاترە بەڵکو ڕێژەیەکی زۆریشیان دەستی کردووە بە گێڕانەوەی خۆی و ڕەوایەتکردنی خۆی ئەزانم دەرفەتمانە ئاماژە بە شتێکی بچووک بدەم لێکۆڵینەوەی کەمە خوێندەوە لە مخاتونێک بە ناوی چراڕەشید کە ئاماژە بەوە ئەکات کە چۆن کوردەکانی دیاسپۆرا کوردەکانی بریتانیا بە بڕێک شتەوە شۆناسیان و ناسنامەیان بە بڕێک شتەوە پەیوەندی خواردووە ینی ئەو هیبریدیتیەی کە ئێمە هەمانە لەوێ وەک کەسێکە لە وڵاتەکەی خۆی لە وڵاتەکەی خۆیدا نەماوە کەسێکی مهاجرە لە شوێنێکی ترا نیشتەجێ بووە چی ئەیبەستێتەوە بە ڕابردووی خۆیەوە چی پەیوەندی دروست دەکات و شۆناسێکی تازەی بۆ دروست دەکات کە تۆزێکە لە کوردبوون و تۆزێک لە بریتانیایی بوون ڕەوایەتێکە کە لە پشتی شتەکانەوە هەیە و ئەم ڕەوایەتە لە لایەن خودی کەسەکانەوە هەیە ینی خودی کەسەکان دایکەکان کچەکان بنەماڵەکان بە گێڕانەوەی جیاواز ئەو ناسنامەیان دەوڵەمەندتر کردوێتەوە و ناسنامەیەک جیا لە کوردبوون و بریتانیایی بوونیان دروست کردووە شتێکی جیا لە هەردووکیانە گەر نەڵێن سەروی هەردووکیان قاعدەتەن ناتوانین ئەو بڕیارە بدەین کەواتە ئێمە ئەبێ دڵخۆش بین بەوەی کە ئێستا ژنان خەریکی گێڕانەوەی بەسەرهات و ئەزمموی ژینراوی خۆیانن و لەم ڕێگەوە ناسنامەی کورد لایەنەکانی زیاترمان پێنیشان ئەدەن و تەسویرێکی دەوڵەمەندترمان بۆ وێناکەن.
That's زۆر سپاس. Thanks for all our panelists for their contributions and thank you all for listening. I think we will have lunch now. That's it. Thank you all.